The old man moved slowly away from the firing line, his steps steady, and measured, his eyes scanning the range with a calm that suggested he was not just a visitor but someone who had seen this world before, someone who knew the weight of every shot fired, every echo that lingered in the air. He carried himself with the quiet dignity of a soldier who had been through battles, not just with weapons, but with time and memory. Around him the range buzzed with its usual activity, the sound of shells hitting metal, the low murmur of conversations, and the occasional sharp command from instructors. But all of that seemed distant to the old man, as if he was walking through a different time, a space where the noise didn't reach him, where the ghosts of the past moved silently alongside him. The recruit, watching from the far side of the range, felt a strange pull, a mix of curiosity and respect, his heart pounding in a way that wasn't just about adrenaline but about recognition, about the sudden realization that this man was part of a story bigger than any training exercise, bigger than any mission or medal the recruit had ever dreamed of. Tattoo on the old man's forearm was unmistakable, the trident of the Navy SEALs, a symbol that only a handful of men earned, a mark of honor and sacrifice, a badge of courage and brotherhood. But the old man wore it like a secret kept carefully hidden beneath the years, and the quiet recruit tried to recall everything he knew about the symbol, about the men who bore it, about the legends and whispers passed down through the ranks, about those who had walked paths few could imagine. But this man was different. No tales had prepared him for the weight in the old man's eyes, for the silence that spoke louder than words. The old man stopped near a rusted bench, taking a deep breath. He looked out at the distant hills where the sun was beginning its slow descent, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for something to unfold. The recruit wondered what memories were stirring inside the old man's mind, what battles were playing out in the silence of that gazette. He saw the old man's hands trembling just slightly, a subtle sign of age, or maybe something more. The recruit had heard stories of warriors carrying wounds, unseen scars that ran deeper than flesh, stories of men who fought not just in the fields but in their minds long after the guns fell silent. The old man pulled a worn photograph from his jacket, a faded image of younger men in uniform, some smiling, others serious, the edges curled with time and care. He traced the faces gently, his eyes misting as if remembering names and faces lost to the passage of years. The recruit edged closer, not wanting to intrude but unable to resist the pull of the moment. He cleared his throat softly and said, "Sir, I couldn't help but notice your tattoo. It's a symbol I respect deeply. May I ask about your story?" The old man looked up slowly, his eyes sharp and piercing despite the years. A small smile touched his lips, a smile that was both sad and proud. He said, "Son, the tattoo you see is a mark of a life lived on the edge, a life filled with battles. Most people never see a life of brotherhood, sacrifice, and sometimes pain that you carry long after the war is over." Folded the photograph carefully and looked back at the recruit. There was a flicker of something in his gaze, a glimmer of the man he once was, the man who had stood tall in the face of danger and who now stood quietly here at the edge of the range, a soldier no longer in combat but still carrying the fight inside. The recruit nodded his respect, understanding the unspoken code that linked them. The old man was not just a visitor at the range, he was a living piece of history, a reminder of what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, and to endure. The old man sighed deeply and said, "Sometimes, son, the hardest battle is not the one fought with guns, but the one fought with silence, the one where you carry the memories that no one else can see, where the wounds are invisible but just as real." Stood and started walking again, his steps steady but slower now. The recruit watched him go, knowing this was only the beginning of a story that needed to be told, a story of honor, pain, and the quiet strength of a man who wore his past like a hidden badge of courage. As the old man disappeared down the gravel path, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. The range hummed with life, but for the recruit the world had shifted. He knew he had to find out more, to uncover the truths behind the tattoo, to listen to the stories that could save lives and honor the silent sacrifices of those who came before. Shooting range was no longer just a place of routine and noise, it was now a gateway to a journey that would change everything for a quiet old man and a young recruit brought together by a symbol that should never have been forgotten the next morning. Dawn pale and gray, a mist hanging low over the range as the young recruit arrived early, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. The air was cool and smelled faintly of damp earth and pine, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the day before, but his mind was restless, filled with questions that would not let him go. The to the old man, the stories behind those faded eyes, all swirling like a storm. He could not ignore. He moved to the same spot where he had first seen the old man, hoping against hope that he might return, that he could find answers. Instead, there was only the echo of footsteps long gone. The metal targets gleamed cold and silent, waiting patiently for the day to begin. The recruit settled against a bench, pulling his jacket tighter against the chill, but inside the warmth of curiosity and determination burned bright. Range slowly filled with the usual crowd, voices rising and falling in a familiar rhythm, some nodding to each other, some greeting instructors. But the recruit's eyes were searching, always searching for a glimpse of the quiet visitor who had shaken the stillness of his world. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher, chasing away the mist. The sounds of gunfire grew louder, the sharp cracks mingling with laughter and shouted commands, but still the old man did not appear, and the recruit's heart sank a little with the fading hope. Something had shifted, something subtle and profound. The stories he had heard in training about courage and sacrifice took on new weight, new meaning. The tattoo was no longer just a symbol, but a doorway, a key to a past he longed to understand. The recruit knew that finding the old man was only the beginning of a much larger journey. That afternoon, the recruit made his way to the local Veterans Center, a small building nestled between shops and cafes, a place where those who had served came to share stories, find support, or simply be understood. The walls were lined with photos, medals, and plaques, each telling a fragment of 1,000 untold tales. Inside the center, he found a librarian, an older woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice who listened carefully as he described the old man, the tattoo, and the shooting range. She nodded slowly and said, "I might know a few things about him if you have time. Come with me." They walked down narrow aisles filled with books and archives, a labyrinth of memories. The librarian pulled out a faded file, a collection of photographs, letters, and reports. A life captured in fragments and shadows. The name on the top was familiar, a name whispered with respect and sometimes sorrow. The recruit's fingers trembled as he flipped through the pages, each image a glimpse into a world of danger and honor. The old man had been part of missions no civilian could imagine, battles fought in darkness and silence, operations where failure meant death, not just for him but for his brothers in arms. The tattoo was more than a symbol, it was a mark of those who had walked through hell and returned carrying the weight of secrets and sacrifices. The recruit realized the old man's story was a bridge between the past and the present, a living testament to the cost of service and the resilience of the human spirit. As the sun set outside, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, the recruit sat quietly in the center, surrounded by history, feeling both small and deeply connected. He knew that finding the old man again was not just about curiosity, but about honor, about learning to see the quiet heroes who walked among them. On not a set that night, the recruit lay awake, replaying the memories he had uncovered and the questions still burning inside him. Who was the old man really? What had he lost and gained in his years of service, and how could he carry those lessons forward in his own journey? Shooting range was no longer just a place of practice, but a gateway to stories waiting to be told, a place where the past met the future and where a young recruit and a quiet old man were linked by more than a tattoo, by a shared legacy of courage, sacrifice, and hope. The following morning, the recruit arrived at the range before dawn, the air crisp and heavy with the scent of pine and dew, the sky a soft shade of blue just beginning to brighten with the first hints of light. As he settled near the benches, his eyes scanning every figure that entered the grounds, searching for the familiar quiet presence, he felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on him, each moment stretching longer than the last. Shooting range slowly came to life as Regula's trickled in, greeting each other with nods and casual smiles, their voices low but steady, the steady rhythm of preparation unfolding around him, the clinking of cartridges, the soft rustle of gear being adjusted, and the distant reports of gunfire, creating a symphony of routine and discipline. Among this familiar bustle, the recruit felt the stillness of the old man's absence as a hollow space, a silence that demanded to be filled. He thought back to the faded photograph and the solemn words spoken, the promise of stories waiting just beneath the surface, a legacy etched in skin and memory. Then, just as the sun crested the hills, casting golden light across the range, a figure emerged from the tree line, moving slowly but deliberately. The old man had returned. His weathered face carried the same quiet strength, the same steady gaze that seemed to hold worlds within it. The recruit rose to his feet, heart pounding, as the old man approached the bench, a small nod of recognition passing between them. The years and distance melted away in that simple gesture, a bridge built on respect and unspoken understanding. Sir, he began hesitantly, the words carrying the weight of many questions. I've come to learn about your past, about what the tattoo means to those of us who serve now. I want to understand your story, if you are willing to share. The old man smiled faintly, a smile touched by both pride and pain. He sat down slowly, the creak of the bench sounding loud in the quiet morning air. For years, he said, the world saw me as a shadow, a ghost, someone who fought battles no one could talk about, someone who carried the weight of silence and secret. Spoke then in a voice low but steady about missions in faraway places, nights filled with danger and the constant presence of death, the bond with brothers in arms, the pain of loss and the toll of survival. The tattoo was not just ink on skin, it was a map of those journeys, a reminder of sacrifices made and promises kept. The recruit listened with rapt attention, absorbing every word, every pause, every breath, as if catching fragments of a sacred story passed down through generations. He saw the flicker of memories in the old man's eyes, the moments of triumph and the shadows of regret, the resilience that refused to fade. They talked for hours, the morning fading into afternoon, sharing not just history but lessons about honor, humility, and the true meaning of strength. The recruit realized that behind the quiet exterior was a man who had given everything, and then some, a man whose legacy was more than a symbol, it was a living testament. As the sun dipped low once more, the old man stood and placed a steady hand on the recruit's shoulder. You carry that tattoo proudly, he said, but remember, it is not the ink that makes a warrior, but the heart, the courage to face the unseen battles, and the willingness to stand for those who can know. The recruit nodded, understanding now that his journey was only beginning, that the tattoo was a key, but the real story was about the men who bore it, the sacrifices they made, and the lives they touched. They parted with a promise to meet again, a bond forged in respect and shared purpose. The shooting range was no longer just a place to practice skill, but a place where stories lived, where the past and present met, and where a quiet old man and a young recruit had found something far greater than themselves, a connection that would shape their futures forever. Days following their meeting at the range passed with a strange mixture of normalcy and unease. For the recruit, the old man's story had opened a door that could not be closed, and each new dawn brought with it a flood of questions and memories that refused to settle, like restless ghosts stirring beneath the surface. Back at the base, the recruit found himself haunted by images of distant deserts and dark waters, by whispered names and secret places where the old man had walked with danger as his constant companion. A tattoo that symbolized brotherhood had become a key, unlocking a labyrinth of history and emotion. Sought out other veterans at the center, hoping to piece together fragments of the past, hoping to find faces and voices that might help him understand the man who had captured his attention so completely. Some spoke in riddles, others in harsh truths, but all carried the weight of experience, the scars of wars both seen and unseen. On evening, as the sun bled red across the sky, the recruit sat with a group sharing stories around a worn wooden table, stories of missions gone wrong, of friends lost, of moments when courage was the only weapon left. The old man's name came up, whispered with reverence and sometimes anger, a name that meant more than legend. It meant sacrifice. The recruit listened closely, learning that the old man had once been part of a unit called the Phantom Wolves, a team that operated in shadows beyond the reach of the public eye, a brotherhood forged in fire and silence, a unit that had saved countless lives and carried burdens too heavy to speak aloud. But with glory came loss, and the Phantom Wolves had been shattered by a mission that went wrong, a betrayal that left wounds that never fully healed. The old man's retreat into silence was not just a choice, but a shield, a way to protect himself and those he loved from the pain that lingered like a storm cloud. Recruit felt the weight of that pain as if it was his own, and knew that understanding was not enough, that he needed to find a way to honor the old man's legacy, to carry forward the lessons hidden in shadows, to stand not just as a soldier but as a guardian of memory in the quiet moments between training and duty. The recruit reached out to the old man again, seeking more than stories, seeking connection and guidance. The old man responded with a steady patience, sharing bits of wisdom that went beyond tactics and weapons, teaching about resilience, the strength of silence, and the power of trust. Together they began to build something new, a bond that bridged generations, a partnership that promised healing and hope. The old man's past was no longer a burden but a foundation, a source of strength that the recruit could draw from as he faced his own challenge. An afternoon, as they walked the perimeter of the range, the old man stopped and pointed to a distant mountain peak. "The battles we fight are not always on the battlefield," he said. "Sometimes they are inside us, hidden, but no less real. The tattoo is a reminder, but it is the heart that carries the true weight." The recruit nodded, understanding that this journey was not just about weapons or missions, but about the courage to face oneself, to embrace both strength and vulnerability, to honor those who came before and those who would follow. As the sunset casting long shadows across the range, the two men stood side by side, the silence between them no longer empty but full of meaning. The quiet old man and the eager recruit were no longer strangers, but brothers in arms, connected by a legacy that transcended time. And so the story continued, unfolding one step at a time, a journey through shadows and light, through pain and hope, a journey that would change them both forever. The weeks that followed were filled with training and quiet conversations, moments of intense focus and unexpected vulnerability. The recruit found himself growing not just in skill but in understanding, each day peeling back layers of what it meant to serve, what it meant to carry a legacy tattooed not just on skin but etched into the soul. The old man became more than a figure of mystery. He became a mentor, a guide whose lessons extended beyond firearms and tactics into the realm of character, resilience, and honor. The recruit listened carefully, absorbing wisdom born from years of experience and pain, lessons that no textbook could teach. Yet beneath the surface there was a storm brewing, a silent battle the old man fought every day, a war waged inside the confines of his mind, memories that refused to fade, ghosts of missions past that haunted his sleep. The recruit saw the flickers of pain, the moments when the old man's gaze grew distant and his hands trembled slightly. On evening, after a long day at the range, the old man sat quietly staring into the fading light, his voice barely above a whisper, saying, "Sometimes the hardest fight is the one that no one sees, the battle against the shadows inside the mind, against memories that cut deeper than any bullet." Recruit sat beside him, feeling the weight of those words, understanding in a way that went beyond sympathy. He realized that courage was not just about facing external threats, but about confronting inner demons, about finding strength in vulnerability, about the willingness to seek help when the burden became too much. Reached out and placed a steady hand on the old man's shoulder, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about trust and solidarity. The old man looked up and nodded, a faint smile breaking through the weariness, a silent acknowledgement that he was not alone. Together they began to explore ways to fight this unseen battle, connecting with others who understood the scars of war, who had faced similar struggles and found paths toward healing. The recruit learned that strength was found not only in physical prowess but in community and honesty, and in the courage to ask for help. They attended support groups, shared stories with other veterans and discovered that the bonds forged in combat could extend into peace, offering hope and understanding beyond the battlefield. The old man's story became part of a larger narrative, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As spring turned to summer, the recruit noticed changes, not just in the old man, but in himself, a deepening sense of purpose and empathy, a commitment to carry forward the lessons of sacrifice and healing. The tattoo was no longer just a symbol of past battles, but a beacon guiding them toward a future defined by courage and compassion. One afternoon, as they trained side by side, the old man paused and said, "Remember, son, the fight never truly ends, but neither does the chance to rise again, to find peace amid the chaos, to live with honor even in the face of pain." The recruit nodded, understanding that their journey was far from over, that the legacy of the tattoo was a living story written every day in moments of struggle and triumph, in acts of kindness and resilience. They stood together, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the sky ablaze with color, a reminder that even after the darkest battles, there was always light waiting to be found. Days grew longer and warmer as summer settled over the range, but beneath the bright skies and the steady rhythm of training, there was a deepening connection between the recruit and the old man, a bond forged not just through shared hours, but through stories, pain, and moments of unexpected laughter. Old man had begun to open up more, revealing pieces of a life that had once been locked away behind walls built to protect himself and others. His voice was steady but carried the weight of memories, moments of triumph and loss that shaped him into the man he was today. Told the recruit about the grueling training that had pushed him to the edge of endurance, the missions that required absolute trust, and the unbreakable bonds formed in the crucible of combat. The Phantom Wolves had been more than a unit, they were a family bound by honor, sacrifice, and an unspoken promise to never leave a brother behind. Recruit listened with growing admiration, realizing that the tattoo on the old man's arm was more than ink. It was a testament to loyalty, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown. Together they spoke of the rituals, the camaraderie, the moments of quiet reflection that balanced the chaos of war. Yet, alongside the pride, there was pain. The old man recounted the mission that shattered the Phantom Wolves, the ambush that took brothers from him, and the betrayal that lingered like a shadow over the years. The recruit felt the depth of that loss and the resilience it demanded, a resilience that went beyond physical strength. In response, the recruit shared his own fears and doubts, the challenges of living up to a legacy that felt both inspiring and intimidating. The old man smiled and said that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward. Despite it, that every warrior wrestled with doubts, but the true measure was in the will to persevere. Their conversations stretched late into the evenings, often under the vast sky filled with stars, a silent witness to their shared journey. The old man's stories became lessons, the recruit's questions became bridges that connected past and present, weaving a tapestry of understanding and hope. One day, the old man surprised the recruit with a small leather-bound journal worn with years. Inside were notes, reflections, and sketches, a map of memories and wisdom offered freely, a gift to carry forward. The recruit accepted it with reverence, knowing it was more than a book. It was a piece of a life lived fully and honestly. They trained harder, now pushing each other, testing limits, but always with care. The old man's steady presence, a grounding force, the recruit's youthful energy, a spark of hope. Together they embodied the legacy of the tattoo, a living proof that strength came from unity and trust. As summer edged toward fall, the two men stood side by side, watching the sunset over the hills, the sky painted with streaks of amber and violet, a moment of peace in a world that often demanded so much. They knew their journey was far from over, but for now they found comfort in the bond that had grown between them. The quiet old man, who had once been invisible to the world, had become a mentor and friend. The young recruit, who had been searching for meaning, had found a path illuminated by courage and compassion. Together they carried forward a story that was still unfolding, a story of honor, sacrifice, and the enduring power of brotherhood. As autumn deepened, the air grew crisp and leaves crunched beneath boots. The recruit and the old man found themselves drawn into a new chapter of their shared journey, a challenge that would test everything they had learned together and force them to confront the legacy of the tattoo in a way neither had expected. The base received word of a crisis unfolding overseas, a call for support that demanded the expertise of those who understood shadows and silence, a high-risk mission that required not just skill, but the courage to face the unknown and the scars left by past battles. The old man listened carefully, the lines on his face deepening as memories stirred his eyes, held a distant look, a mixture of pain and resolve. He turned to the recruit and said, "This is the moment we train for, the moment that calls for every lesson, every sacrifice. The mission may reopen old wounds, but it is also a chance for redemption and to honor those we lost." The recruit felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with fear and determination. He knew this was not just a test of physical strength, but a proving ground for the heart, the courage to step into the breach even when the cost was high. Preparations began immediately. Training intensified, briefings were given and plans drawn with precision, every detail scrutinized, every scenario imagined. The old man's calm presence steadied the team, his experience a beacon guiding them through uncertain times. Night before deployment, the recruit sat alone, staring at the tattoo on his own arm, a mirror of the old man's symbol, a connection to a legacy far greater than himself. He thought of the stories of sacrifice and brotherhood, the pain and resilience, and vowed to carry that weight with honor. As dawn broke, the team moved out, the air heavy with anticipation and resolve. The mission was a delicate dance of stealth and strategy, a test of nerve and skill that pushed each member to their limits. The old man and the recruit worked seamlessly side by side, a testament to trust built over months of shared hardship. Operation unfolded with moments of intense danger and quiet triumph, the shadows giving way to glimpses of hope. Every step forward was a tribute to the brothers who had fallen and a promise to those who would follow through the chaos. The recruit saw the old man's strength not just in action, but in the quiet moments, the steady gaze, the unwavering commitment to the mission and to the men beside him. It was a reminder that true courage was often unseen, that heroism lived in the everyday choices to stand and fight. When the mission finally concluded, the team returned changed, carrying the invisible scars of battle, but also the unbreakable bonds forged in fire. The recruit felt a deep sense of pride mingled with humility, knowing that he had walked a path once traveled by legends. Back at the base, as they debriefed, the old man placed a firm hand on the recruit's shoulder, saying, "This is only the beginning. That the legacy you carry is alive and must be honored, not just in battle, but in every choice you maketh." Recruit nodded, understanding now that the tattoo was more than a mark. It was a call to live with integrity, courage, and compassion, to be a guardian not just of weapons, but of stories and memories. The quiet old man and the eager recruit had faced the shadows together and emerged not just as warriors, but as brothers bound by a shared destiny and an unbreakable legacy. The days after the mission were filled with a quiet stillness, a time to heal, reflect, and rebuild. The recruit and the old man found themselves back at the range, the familiar sights and sounds a balm to the soul, yet beneath the surface was a deeper awareness that their journey was far from over. The old man watched the recruit with a mixture of pride and hope, knowing that the torch was being passed not just in symbol but in spirit. The tattoo was no longer just a mark of past glories, but a living legacy, a charge to carry forward, the lessons learned, the sacrifices made, and the bonds forged in fire. They spent hours talking about what it meant to be more than warriors, about the responsibility to honor history by living with integrity, kindness, and courage. The recruit shared his dreams and fears. The old man listened, offering wisdom born from a lifetime of experience and pain. Together they planned ways to give back to their community, to support other veterans, and to create a space where stories like theirs could be told and heard. They envisioned a future where the silent sacrifices of the past were no longer invisible, where the tattoo was a symbol of hope and healing as much as strength. Recruit began mentoring younger recruits, sharing Not just skills, but the deeper truths of service, the importance of empathy, resilience, and brotherhood. The old man found peace in knowing that his story and those of his brothers in the Phantom Wolves would live on, inspiring new generations sown. Afternoon, as they stood overlooking the range, the old man traced the tattoo on his arm, a smile touching his lips, and said, "The mark is only the beginning. It is what you do with it that defines you." The recruit nodded, feeling the weight and the promise of those words settling deep in his heart. He stood side by side, watching the sunset casting long shadows across the land, the sky alive with color, a reminder that even after the darkest battles, there was always light waiting to be found. Their story was a testament to courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of brotherhood, a story that would continue to unfold with every new day. The quiet old man and the eager recruit had come full circle, bound by a tattoo, a legacy, and a friendship that transcended time and pain. Together they had faced shadows and found strength. Together they had discovered that true honor was living with heart and standing for something greater than oneself. And as the stars appeared one by one in the vast night sky, they knew that the journey would go on, that the legacy of the tattoo was not just etched in skin, but alive in every heartbeat, in every act of courage and compassion, in every silent promise kept. Their story was far from over. It was only just beginning.